Good afternoon and welcome to the News Roundup for Monday, September 29, 2025. I'm Bill Thomas, and here's what's happening right now. Enough is enough. President Trump deploying National Guard troops to protect federal buildings in Portland. The clock is ticking. Congressional leaders gather at the White House for a critical last-minute meeting as they try desperately to prevent a disastrous government shutdown. And another one bites the dust. New York City's mayor drops out of the race, leaving an avowed socialist with the inside track to become the Big Apple's next top dog. Also, why the cost of seeing a movie made outside the U.S. could soon double, and the world's most popular fast food chain bringing back an old favorite. And we'll tell you how you can score $1 million just by chowing down at the Golden Arches. All this and a bunch more coming up right now on the Big Roundup. We kick things off today with President Trump taking decisive action to return public safety to the streets of a major West Coast city, which he says is under attack from out-of-control domestic terrorists. The president now assuming control of more than 200 Oregon National Guard troops and deploying them immediately to what he calls the war-ravaged city of Portland. He says he's making the move in order to protect both immigration enforcement officers and ICE government facilities, which he claims are currently under siege and being targeted by a number of radical terror groups, including Antifa. Additionally, Trump says he's giving these newly deployed troops the go-ahead to use full force if it ever becomes necessary to bring an end to any potential disturbance. Meanwhile, local officials objecting loudly to the deployment, with Oregon's Attorney General announcing plans to file a federal lawsuit which claims that by sending in the troops, Trump is overstepping his presidential authority. The Attorney General argues that what we're seeing has nothing to do with public safety at all, saying that instead the president is simply flexing his political muscle, abusing his power, and chasing a media hit at the expense of the entire Portland community. The state's governor and Portland's mayor, both Democrats, also weighing in against the deployment, and the governor claiming there's absolutely no threat to national security in her state. The Portland deployment is being compared to a couple of similar and highly successful actions recently taken by the Trump administrations, and they include the positioning of 4,000 California National Guard troops and 700 active-duty U.S. Marines to protect the city of L.A. from violent protesters. That was back in the summer, sometime in June, as well as the administration's efforts to use National Guard patrols to safeguard our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Final thought, and this is the News Roundup Lowdown. There's the deal, and this is something we've discussed in the past right here on the Big Roundup. If the President of the United States can dispatch our nation's armed forces to virtually any corner of the planet at any time for any reason, then it's certainly within the purview to do the same thing right here at home. Members of the National Guard, they're being deployed to portions of Oregon and in small numbers simply to assist in protecting ICE agents as well as to safeguard government buildings. Naturally, state leaders in Oregon will take exception to the president's actions, but he's already done this in L.A., Washington, D.C. as well, and the results have been overwhelmingly positive. Even the mayor of Washington says, thanks, our streets are absolutely safer. That Oregon's governor takes exception with this action is no monumental surprise, and Democrats will always oppose anything the Trump administration does, regardless of the fact that the extra protection, absolutely much needed. Also, a quick note to Oregon's State Attorney General. The Honorable, though mildly obscure and mildly confused, Dan Rayfield. On behalf of taxpayers in your state, thank you in advance for wasting time, money, and resources on your goofy lawsuit. However, the president is not overstepping his authority, and the last thing in the world Donald Trump needs right now is a media hit. On the other hand, up till right now, nobody has ever heard of you, Mr. Rayfield. So perhaps you're the one who's looking for the media hit and desperately seeking your 2 minutes of fame. Yeah, enjoy it while you can. Your thoughts and comments always welcome. And we're at newsroundupwithbill@gmail.com. And dipping his hands deep into the email bag, that guy over there, we welcome back to the program, Big Bad Davy Ross. This must have a lot of folks up in arms, Davy. What are folks saying?
Well, you know, Bill, a lot of people are weighing in on this topic. And let's start with Douglas, who's writing to us from Bellingham, Washington.
Hiya, Doug. Welcome to the program.
Doug says, Portland is a wreck and needs all the help it can get.
Yeah.
In my honest opinion, 200 troops won't be enough, and I applaud the president for having the common sense to save our cities.
Absolutely. Look, this deployment is nothing to get riled about. 200 troops, come on. They're being sent to the area, and it's no big deal. State leadership should welcome the additional resources, greet them with open arms, and thank the president for the extra protection. It is needed, and my best guess is, knowing what little I know about Portland, and Dave, you've schooled me a little bit, I think more troops are on the way. Change things up just a bit now. Turn our attention to a critical 11th hour meeting at the White House where the president, the vice president, and our nation's top lawmakers took part in a high-stakes face-to-face trying to find a way to avoid the looming federal government shutdown, which is now just a few short hours away. White House says that even though President Trump really wants to keep the government open, he's not planning to negotiate in any way with congressional Democrats. They say the president was just giving these Democrats one final chance today to come to their senses, be reasonable, agree to sign the Republican-approved legislation, which will keep the government up and running. So, unless a temporary funding bill passes in the next few hours, a large number of government offices will temporarily shut their doors, and thousands of federal employees will be released from their jobs, some of them never to return. Hey, right now, both Republicans and Democrats, they're playing a high-stakes game of chicken over the funding battle, with each side refusing to blink. Now, the GOP is simply trying to keep the government going at its current funding levels, while their counterparts are refusing to budge until their demands are met. Meet our demands. Those lofty demands, by the way, they include putting back in place a bunch of recently trimmed public health care benefits. Unfortunately, the president now says he remains highly doubtful that any sort of last-minute deal will come out of today's White House summit, and he's blaming the Democrats for holding our nation hostage with their demands. For their part, the Democrats claim that further negotiations, they're still needed before any type of deal can be reached. And in a related note, the president also meeting today at the White House with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and announcing that Israel has accepted his 20-point plan for a peace deal in Gaza. All parties now waiting for Hamas to either accept the deal or face the consequences. If nothing else, President Trump is one busy guy. There's always something going on, never asleep on the job. A final thought, and this is the News Roundup Lowdown. The last thing anyone in the Trump administration wants to see right now is a government shutdown. It's not good for the country. Nobody wins. And Democrats have got to come to the table and negotiate intelligently. Unfortunately, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, and others in their camp, they're willing to hold the country hostage, mark my words, hostage, and risk a shutdown till they get what they want with regard to government-sponsored health care benefits. Sadly, Democrats playing a dangerous endgame, and just because we control the House and the Senate, they shouldn't count on Americans blaming Republicans if the government shuts down. In fact, in my estimation, it's Democrats who could be blamed for the catastrophe, and they may find themselves in peril during next year's midterm elections if they fail to act right now and in the best interests of our country and their constituents. This does not have to be difficult, and for now, you got to keep the government open. In a short period of time, circle back, negotiate additional funding for health care, and cooperate with Republicans on addressing waste, fraud, and abuse in the system. It's there. It's been pointed out very clearly. It's amazing how much you can accomplish when you listen and negotiate and compromise. There is, in fact, a path forward. Your thoughts and comments always encouraged. We're right here at newsroundupwithbill@gmail.com. Davey, where do we stand on this one? This is a big deal right now.
Oh, yeah, the clock is ticking, Bill.
Yeah, what are folks saying?
Olive in Philadelphia.
Hello, Ollie.
Checking in with us today, saying, if you refuse to compromise with the Democrats, why should they compromise with you?
Well, because we're trying to put a deal together to keep the government operating, to satisfy the needs and the wants and the desires of the American population. This should not be a Democrat or a Republican issue. This should be all sides coming together, trying to find a solution. And as I mentioned moments ago, if you don't get what you want right now with regard to health care and government funding for health care, sign the deal now, keep the government open, operational, and funded, circle back in a short period of time and try to negotiate again. Don't just give up and hold the whole country hostage. Ollie, I appreciate you checking in. And David, who's up next?
Okay, Bill, a bit of a different view here from Bart in Casper, Wyoming.
Hello, Bart.
And Bart says the Dems are willing to sell our country down the tubes just because they don't get their way. What kind of leadership is that?
Yeah, look, if your car has a flat tire, you don't throw away the car. You keep the car, you patch the tire, or you buy a new tire, or you put the donut on the car. Davey, are you familiar with the donut in a car?
Of course, unfortunately.
It's that little tiny tire in the back or under the car or somewhere on the vehicle. You put the donut on that. That's not going to save the day, but that will hold you for a week or two till you can find that new tire. Democrats simply trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater. If they don't get every last thing they want, they're going to shut the government down. They're also doing something really tragic right now. They're signaling to the world, and at the worst possible time in the history of our country, that the U.S. can't hold their own country together. It's tragic messaging. Now we're going to stick with politics a bit longer and shift our focus to the Big Apple, where, in a shocking development, current mayor Eric Adams has just dropped out of New York City's high-profile mayoral race, leaving an avowed Democratic Socialist candidate firmly in the lead with only weeks to go until the pivotal election. Adams saying that despite all he's accomplished during his time in office, he can no longer stay in the race for re-election simply because he can't raise enough cash to continue his campaign. Politics is big business. The move now clearing the way for either Republican candidate Curtis Sliwa or former New York City Governor Andrew Cuomo, who's running as an independent, to consolidate their vote and mount a significant challenge to the race's current frontrunner. Yeah, that guy, Democratic nominee Zoran Mamdani. In case you're not aware, the 33-year-old Mamdani says that the current mayor's withdrawal from the contest now turns the page on the era of big money politics and the Big Apple. Goes on to say that while President Trump and his billionaire donors may be able to influence the actions of both Cuomo and Adams with their cash, they have no influence over him at all. And as a result, they're now powerless to dictate the results of this upcoming high-profile election. Now, for his part, President Trump has been calling for a number of candidates to drop out of the New York mayoral race so that whoever remains has a better chance of beating that guy, Mamdani. The president also slamming the socialist economic agenda as a significant threat to business throughout the city. So, Mamdani's radical platform includes free buses, city-owned grocery stores, and rent freezes for city tenants. Some experts believe these policies would lead investors to rapidly abandon New York, hit the skids, bust out, therefore creating a financial crisis by drastically weakening the city's tax base. Final thoughts, and this is the News Roundup Lowdown. There's a big deal here. This is the mayor's race, but it's just a kind of a critical race. It's happening in the biggest city in the USA, and the outcome of this race, this could have severe consequences for both New York and the entire country. Now that Mayor Adams has excused himself from the race, it looks like Mamdani is inching closer and closer to a win in the rapidly approaching election. Mamdani calls himself a Democratic Socialist who's pushing for free buses, city-owned grocery stores, rent freezes for tenants, and rent-stabilized apartments. Yeah, sounds kind of good, but, outside of semi-fresh air in New York, nothing in life is free, including buses. What he's actually pushing for is free rides on buses, not free buses. The city has to purchase those vehicles, pay to have them fueled up, maintained, repaired, and driven. Look, make no mistake, taxes will rise, and that free bus ride he's yakking about, all he's talking about is nothing more than a shell game. Also, and this is a big deal, city-owned grocery stores. If you're going to do that, then please add city-owned sporting goods stores, bowling alleys, restaurants, taverns, and everything else. Go big or go home. Come on, Mamdani, step up, man, do it right. Oh, yeah, those rent-stabilized apartments, a brilliant idea if you're a renter, but not so swell if you're a landlord. Hey, New York, be careful what you wish for because you just might get it. Now, drop us an email. Tell us what you think about this Mamdani fella. You'll catch us at newsroundupwithbill@gmail.com. And, Davey, what are folks saying about this guy?
Okay, Bill, I'm going to go straight to the horse's mouth for somebody who lives in New York.
Yeah.
Okay, here's one from Gloria in Manhattan.
What are you thinking, Gloria?
She says, if Mamdani wins the election, I'm leaving the city. It'll definitely be a case of the inmates running the asylum.
Yeah, and other folks are saying the same things. I've heard pundits saying for quite some time, every now and again you kind of need a Mamdani to realize just how bad he is. If he wins an election in time, there'll be a referendum. He'll be kicked out. He'll be impeached. He'll be thrown to the curb. Or come the next election, people will know what they got from this guy, and they'll find somebody better. And that's not going to take a lot of searching. I appreciate you checking in, and who's up next?
Okay, Bill, here's another one from New York. Alistair from Long Island City, New York.
Hello, Big Al. What's on your mind?
Al says the reason Mamdani is winning is because people are tired of the corruption and wealthy oligarchs dictating terms.
Yeah.
Right now, the city stinks, and he's a breath of fresh air.
Well, the city stunk for an awful long time. You can't blame the last administration. Look, this guy, he is just a pure genius, this Mamdani fella, and you're buying into what he's doing. Just keep offering people free things. Offer free stuff to as many people as you can. Let somebody else pick up the tab, and that somebody else is always the taxpayer, and you're going to have a job in liberal politics for decades and decades. New York, you can do better. And the smart money right now, in my mind, is on Curtis Sliwa. He's a fine Republican, and he is New York. Even Cuomo would be a better bet. All right, a couple of additional headlines we are keeping a very close watch on here in the News Roundup newsroom. President Trump now planning to attend Tuesday's urgent meeting of our nation's top military commanders at a Marine Corps base in Virginia. That gathering, ordered by the Pentagon, set to include hundreds of senior American commanders from across the globe, and the purpose of the mysterious get-together remains unknown. What are your thoughts? I've got my thoughts. I'm a little worried about this one. Now, another point of interest, you might soon be forking over more dough to catch a flick on the big screen, and the president announcing plans to impose a massive 100% tariff on all movies which are made outside the U.S., potentially doubling the price you'd pay to check out films which are produced outside of the country. And right now, that fine mayor of Los Angeles and that fine governor of California, Governor Newsom, you ought to be calling President Trump right now and thanking him because he's trying to bring production back to Hollywood, California. Also, an update to share with you now concerning Sunday's mass shooting and arson attack at a Mormon church in Michigan. Officials now saying that 4 people are dead, 8 others injured as a result of the attack, adding that everyone else who was at the church has now been accounted for. Members of law enforcement also telling us the suspect, 40-year-old U.S. military veteran Thomas Sanford, drove his truck into the church, began shooting at churchgoers before setting the building on fire, before he was eventually killed in a shootout with police officers. The motive for that rampage remains unknown at this time, and the investigation is ongoing. We'll turn now to the world of business and a quick peek at a couple of stories which are currently making waves in finance, trade, and more. Off the top, a massive deal for publicly traded video game giant Electronic Arts, or EA. A number of private investor groups agreeing to purchase the gaming company for a whopping $55 billion, and they're going to turn it private, making it the largest such transaction of its kind in history. The investor groups who are involved include both the Saudi Arabian government as well as a firm managed by the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. It's kind of all in the family. Also, in news related to our nation's urgent race for dominance in the field of AI, the Trump administration announcing plans to invest $625 million to lend a helping hand to our country's struggling coal industry, saying that now more than ever, it's imperative to keep our energy costs down and to stay competitive in the AI battlefield. Also, some troubling news for a couple of our country's top housing markets. A leading Swiss financial firm warning that for the second year running, Miami is at the top of the list of global cities which are most at risk of being in a real estate bubble. And by the way, LA is also near the top of the list at number 4 worldwide, with the high cost of living in both of these cities leading that firm to conclude there's a significant possibility that sooner or later these expensive housing markets could eventually collapse. And I know, speaking on my behalf here in L.A., I think the average price of a home in L.A. and Orange County is close to $800,000 to $900,000. That's not for a mansion. That's for an average-size 4-bed, 2-bath family house. And now time for a look at the lighter side of news, where we take a quick gander at a couple of attention-grabbing stories guaranteed to shake you up and down till the change spills out your pockets. And we'll kick things off with some spectacular news. And this is for people who dream of playing a beloved board game while they enjoy chowing down on a couple of Big Macs, some crispy fries, and a delicious chocolate shake at the Golden Arches. Davey, I kind of like the Golden Arches now and again, but do they really have crispy fries? Every time I've been there, they're kind of
Oh, they're the best French fries in the world, Bill. Come on, crispy, delicious.
They're crispy? Well, they're
golden,
somewhat delicious.
Crispy, delicious.
But I've never seen or tasted a crispy fry. But I do like the fries. They're just not exactly crispy. Anyway, after nearly a decade, McDonald's announcing plans to roll the dice once again and bring back their world-famous Monopoly game. And the enormous prizes you can score, they're simply off the hook. In case you weren't there, the legendary fast food joint, they hands out Monopoly game pieces with their grub, and then you peel off the cover to reveal your prize, which ranges from free food to a dream vacation, or even $1 million. Company says they're bringing back the fan favorite due to popular demand, and they also say that this go-around there won't be any shenanigans like last time, like there were in the past, when a former cop who was in charge of distributing the game pieces throughout the U.S. stole dozens of winning tickets. I remember that story. He cashed them in, $24 million later, $24 million in prizes before eventually getting caught, convicted, and sent to the Hoosgow. Davey, what's a Hoosgow?
Bill, that would be the prison.
Oh, good for him. He's locked up. Now, there's a great LA-based food chain here called In-N-Out Burger here in Southern California. They make legendary double cheeseburgers, and they don't have goofy burger mascots or complicated games, just good grub. My favorite hot dog eatery is called Der Wiener Schnitzel. They make a chili cheese dog that'll change your life. The corn dog's pretty good, too, and they stick to what they're best at. Legendary vittles, no Scrabble games, Parcheesi, or checkers. There's also a little hen house, Davey. I know you know about this one. They're called Chick-fil-A. And if you want a tasty chicken sandwich, it's the place to go. But no goofy contests or prizes. In other words, Producer Davey, when the vittles are satisfying and the price is right, you don't need to sucker people into your diner with goofy board games and a shot to win a new Dodge or a bunch of dough. And speaking of big bucks, when you go to Vegas, there are apparently a couple of things you shouldn't bet on. Never bet on red and never bet on $1 million houses. And here's what we just found out. Yeah, bad bet for a whole bunch of angry homeowners in Las Vegas. Number of folks in Sin City, they're furious, claiming their expensive and recently purchased dream homes are literally collapsing beneath their feet. They say right now the walls of their luxury lakefront properties are in the process of cracking open before their very eyes, and that the floors are tilting so badly they're afraid they're going to topple over every time they take a trip to the kitchen to cobble together a cheese sandwich. The lawyer for the angry homeowner says the property's simply crumbling from below due to problems with the soil, that the construction company which built the homes, they messed up big time, and that it's going to cost $500,000 per house to set things straight. In the meantime, the company that assembled the alleged wrecks, the house wrecks, David, would they be called home wreckers by chance?
That's a good term for them, that's for sure.
Yeah, an entirely different kind of home wrecker, but it sounds right. They say they stand by the quality of their work. I don't know. Look, when you spend that kind of dough on a crib, you kind of expect that you're buying a quality, well-built home and one that's going to last for several generations. Not only is this someone's life savings, it's also a health and safety risk for folks who aren't sure how long their house will remain safe and habitable. Here in L.A., floods, earthquakes, wildfires, and all the rest, I've seen too many houses destroyed. And hopefully the home builder in Vegas makes all the necessary repairs, both safely and rapidly. Best bet, home ownership can be profitable when you buy low and sell high, but it's a risky business. And I'm not a betting man, so left to my devices, I'd bet on renting instead of buying a crib, especially in Vegas. And that is a brief look at the lighter side of news. Tell us what you're thinking. We're at newsroundupwithbill@gmail.com. Davey, any thoughts on the email exchange?
Oh, yeah, Bill. Guaranteed. You mentioned McDonald's and you mentioned Vegas, and you're going to get people to chime in.
That's a pretty good duo, Vegas and McDonald's. What do you got?
Okay, Amanda from Columbia, Missouri.
Okay, Amanda.
And she says, I love McDonald's Monopoly. So much fun and free food to boot. Can't wait.
Hasbro makes a terrific game. It's called Hasbro. McDonald's makes a terrific burger. It's called a Big Mac. There's one and there's the other. They should be separate for all time moving forward. Appreciate you checking in, but you got that one wrong. And Davey, who's up next?
Here's one from Rex in Jacksonville, Florida, Bill.
What are you thinking, Rex?
Rex says, it's hard to feel sorry for someone who decides to buy a house in Vegas.
Yeah.
You roll the dice and sometimes you win. But as we all know, most of the time you lose.
Especially when you're paying $1.3 million for a house in Vegas. You're living in the desert in Nevada. Now, people used to go to Nevada in the old days because housing was affordable, but $1.3 million for a crib, come on. And practice your due diligence. Do some research on the outfit that built homes earlier before you bought that one. Make sure it's the real deal. If your house is already collapsing, they didn't say how long it took, but if it's just a few years or a short period of time, that's a major red flag. Don't bet on red. Don't bet on housing in Las Vegas. Davey, one more. We'll wrap it up.
Okay, Bill, here's one from Lance in Chicago, Illinois.
What you got, Lance?
Lance says, if I bought one of those shabby houses, I'd demand my money back. No way I'm walking around on a floor that's tilted like a carnival funhouse.
Yeah, and even if they do make the repairs, now when you go to sell it next time around, you have to disclose that the home was a bit of a train wreck in prior seasons, and that's going to lower your selling price down the road. So it's really not much of a win-win situation for any of the homeowners, and not for the home builder either. They spent a lot of time and effort and energy building those homes. Apparently, they didn't do it right. They got to go back to the drawing board and spend a bunch of additional dough. You know, an old saying, Davey, do it right the first time. Come on, man. And now it is time for us to call it a wrap on the Don't Strain Your Brain Monday edition of the Big News Roundup. And before we go, as we do each and every day here on the program, we share with you a very notable quote. And these impactful words come to us today from a guy called Charles Dickens, who said, "A loving heart is the truest wisdom." That's very lovely. Dickens was a popular 19th century British writer, widely considered one of the greatest novelists of all time. And among his well-known creations, Oliver Twist, A Tale of Two Cities, and, of course, my favorite, A Christmas Carol. And is that the one he wrote about Carol Brady, A Christmas Carol, the Christmas episode?
No, Bill, A Christmas Carol, Ebenezer Scrooge. It's a very famous Christmas story, Bill. You certainly have heard of that one.
Oh, so it's not about Carol Brady. Honest mistake. And now it is time for us to bust on out. But before we do, don't forget the News Roundup motto. Ask not what your podcast can do for you. Ask what you can do for your podcast. What can you do? Simply subscribe to the program so you never miss a single episode. By the way, before we head out today, we do want to pay our respects to a legendary moment in sports, which took place on this very day back in 1954. And that's when baseball star Willie Mays, and I hope we have a picture of this, baseball star Willie Mays of the New York Giants made his spectacular over-the-shoulder running catch in center field.
There's a long drive, way back in center field, way back, it is.
The play would go on to become one of the most famous plays in baseball history. And by the way, the Giants would go on to win the World Series. Next to the LA Dodgers, the Giants aren't half bad. And now looks like our time, it's officially up. So have an awesome day today. Please stay safe. Let's all continue to watch out for one another. And with that, I'll turn to engineer Jamie. Jamie, please dim the lights. Let's fade to black. And we'll see you right back here tomorrow afternoon.